too. You're sweating like
Okay.
a pig. I goes, ah.
There's a lot of things I started recalling that I didn't
That's
think
good.
of it. But
Okay.
anyway,
Jesus,
I remember going to the
just
different
this
schools
terminology
before
from the old
I'm
school.
gonna go back beyond what, when I was talking about.
Remington.
This is when we moved to that Littlefield, Texas, and I started going to school. I remember in the second grade that they taught Spanish in the second grade, just like they, you know, that was because we had a lot of Latin people, you know, a lot of Mexican kids in the class, and I never forgot. I had to get up and sing in front of the group. In those days, they had these petitions, you know, I guess, to get social. They make you get up and sing before the class, and I didn't know one word of any song other than those religious songs, which I rejected. And from that time, I've never wanted to sing in a group. Anyway, that was when I was, and then there's a period of time there that I hardly remember anything. Then when the war started. But anyway, when we started to move to California, my father took this old car, and we didn't have working on a car. It was a junker car, and to drive from Texas, and they decided to come through Los Angeles. Went to Los Angeles, and there was a lot of people in Los Angeles that had moved during the Depression from Texas to, that was going to Bell Gardens. And we stopped, the preacher that had been a pastor of church in Texas was the preacher in California. We came through there, and we stayed 2 nights in Los Angeles at that preacher's house, and headed up to Bremerton, Washington. And the roads in those days was Highway 66. It was just a little narrow road. It was wide from that couch over there. That's the kind of highways you had. And
That would probably be about
12 feet.
12 feet? Okay.
There's 12 feet of pavement, then there's dirt on each side. That was in 1941. So it took us 2 weeks to get from Texas to Los Angeles. Stayed in Los Angeles 2 days, headed to Bremerton, Washington, and then you come up on Highway 101. And 101, you go through every little town, have a couple of stop signals. It was just terrible. And in those days, we didn't have funds to stop to go to motels. There was technically very few motels. They didn't call them motels. In those days, they were tourist cabins, they called them. And that's all they were, is a little cabin. And usually didn't even have a toilet. Some of them, you had to go to the outside of the house to the toilet. It only cost $1 or $2 to go to those places. And then when you going between those, we didn't stay there very often. You'd stay usually by the side of the road and camp. I remember we blew out several tires, and getting tires, you'd find the used tires all you could get, because in those days there was very few new tires. And I remember my thumb. I was working on driving, getting the hubs apart, and I hit my finger out there and just practically knocked the thumb loose. That was on the way to Washington. And about the thumb was all swollen all the way to go up to Birmingham.
You mentioned the war breaking out. Do you remember where you were when you heard about the war? Do you remember anything about that, when you know, well, Pearl Harbor and that incident, do you remember
Well-
any memories of that?
Very, being in a rural area, we didn't have radios where everybody turned radios on. It's all word of mouth, you know. So within 2 days, everybody, you know, the adults are very involved in it. And everything changed because the laws changed immediately. You know, it was just total. It was when World War II broke out. It's totally different than anything we've encountered with the kind of wars we have today. I mean, it was a total war.
So you heard it from neighbors and there's a chatter going around about the war?
Everybody was talking about the war. It was a serious, very serious thing.
Okay.
They would have said, "Oh, we'll beat those Japs in 2 weeks."
Yes.
That's what they thought. They said, "It's not going to be a real war. These people don't know how to fight. They don't know nothing. They didn't know they're better fighters than we were at the time." But the only thing is, we mechanized so quick and overproduced them, and they couldn't destroy the things that we built fast enough.
What about when the atomic bomb dropped? Did you get any news on that, or was it all direct news, or was it all hearsay?
I knew that was all new. I mean, I knew all of that. We only stayed in Washington 1 year.
You were near where my dad was?
Yeah, we were in Bremerton. He was in Paulsbo. We were.
Okay.
And anyway, my parents didn't like the weather. The weather in Washington it rained every day almost. And they wanted to go back. They liked the Bell Gardens. We moved, within 10 months we moved to Bell Gardens. You could move from, the government don't let you move if you had another job to go to. So they had set up another job for my father in Los Angeles area. He went to work for Vultee Valiant. Remember the Vultee airplanes? Or you won't remember that. Vultee airplanes was what were our basic trainers for the Army Air Force. So anyway, he was employed by Vultee.
What memories do you have of your mother and father?
Oh, just they were very church going, and I was anti-church. So
Your mother was good and cooked good.
my mother
and
was a very
learned to cook when she was little.
passionate, very good lady. My father was too. My father used to always give us, they called it whoopings. Take a belt, fold it up, and hold your hand, and beat your legs and butt. So yeah, I wasn't a real obedient kid to my father and mother. So anyway.
Well, and I mentioned earlier about your interest in electronics and radio and that sort of thing. When did you first get involved with electronics? How old were you when you started?
14 years old. That would be junior high, 7th grade. So what? Anyway, I met a guy that was a ham radio operator. And I liked the things, he showed me his stuff. So what happens on that light is they warm up, they got a heat sensor.
Oh, heat sensor that shuts them down, yeah. I have
Yeah.
a problem with that when I'm on my houses.
Anyway, I started, from that point on, he started telling me, and he started teaching me basics. So from 14 years old, I understood the basics of electronics. And then in high school, since the war started, they taught radio, aircraft engine mechanics. They taught things that would be used in the military. So in the 10th grade, I started taking Radio 1 and Radio 2, and By that time, I bought a car. I was 16 years old. About a 10-year-old, 1931. I bought the same year a car as my father had when he went to Washington. I bought it for $10 because it had been smashed. It had run into a car in the front and run it, and somebody ran into it, smashed it up. So I bought it for $10 and took out the old parts, straightened it up. I was a mechanic from that time. I always watched my dad.
You started to say what it was. You said it was a 31.
31 Chevrolet with a rumble seat.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I patched that up. That was the first car I had, and I only had it for maybe 6 months. Sold it instead of $10. I sold it maybe for $50. Then I bought a better one. By the time I went to join the military when I was 18. But I had 3 or 4 cars.
Yeah, wheels on it. Okay.
So, how old were you when you learned to drive?
I taught myself to drive in my dad's old car. My dad. I drove when they weren't there. Fortunately, we did, you only got 3 gallons of gas a week. I think it's 3 gallons a week is all you got in gas. So the old car, we still had that old 33, same year model as I bought for $10, and my dad hooked it up so we could burn half kerosene and half gas. If you started it on gas, that's what in those cars, the gas tank was above it. That 31 was a gas tank that was above the engine on the front. Well, he put another tank on the side, and he could feed in a little kerosene at a time. So if you got going good, you could actually feed it in and get it running. And kerosene was our heating fuel, so it wouldn't rush. So anyway, I've been around cars all my life, so got in the car and I started them and drive it forward and back it up, drive it forward and back it. Then pretty soon you're going to back it up and drive down the street a little ways and back it up. So that's how I learned to drive. I didn't get out on the road and start going around. You go back and forth a little bit, back and forth, and go down maybe a block. It's usually have a drink.
So, before you mentioned that you had like a one-room school.
Oh,
That's not when we were talking about it.
Oh, when I started the school, that was a school from 1 to the 5th grade. And you progressed, you were put in the grade level by the teacher. The teacher separated the kids, and out of the 5 grades, there's only about 15, 20 kids. So therefore, if you could do she had them in corners, you set up in little groups in the classroom. So, and we also had to go out and get our wood for heating the house, heating the school, because there's no heat, so you had to burn firewood that's picked up in the woods. So the kids go out and pick the wood up in the morning, the boys would, so you'd have fire that day. If it got too cold, you didn't have any wood, they closed the school. You went home. But anyway, I can remember moving up in that school. I was only in the 1st grade maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months. Then when you get up to the level where you can get up to where you read and you count and do certain things, then you moved up to the next level. And I was only in that school maybe probably less than a year. But I remember going from the 1st to the 2nd grade the same year. Then you move to the next school, and they're segregated, and you have to go in there, and it's totally a different thing. You have to learn different because You got to teach. That's where they tried to get me to get up and sing in front of the class. And I've never been able to sing since then.
Now, with your father, in his earlier years, he went to music school. Did that have any impact on the family? Did you do
Well, my
musical
sister
things?
did. Yeah, my father was pretty advanced, and he went to music school, and then he started teaching a little bit, but there was nobody to have money to pay for teaching, so their teaching of music was in the churches in those days.
Yeah.
That was a social life. But
Yeah. You tell us a little bit about your friendship with Leonard. He was a special friend.
well, Leonard lived across the street from me, and his brother was Eugene, which was 2 years older, and he was also advanced in electronics.
And give us Leonard's last name for the record.
B-E-A-L. Well, Eugene Bill, that was a family with 4 boys and no girls. And the father was a college-educated man, and he had a job at a factory, and he was a safety officer. You know, he said it was a big factory, so there's safety policies. He had to figure out what was safe, teach the employees. Well, anyway, you asked about Gene. That's when I was trying to think of the grade.
Leonard.
It was Gene first because I got
sorry.
Gene because of electronics, and Leonard was my age. Gene was 2 years older.
Okay.
And Leonard was also learning a little electronics, and that's when we was building radios and PA systems. And I think at that time, when I started doing that, I was 14 years old. And that's where I learned to build a transmitter. And
Yeah, tell us about when you were transmitting. That's an interesting story. When you were you had kind of your own music station there. Was it in Bell Gardens?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
I even remember the address, 7916 at Banderia.
All right.
Pirate radio.
Pirate radio.
That's
Well,
what they call that.
Well, they call it later pirate radio. Then it was just
Oh, it was free. They didn't make the regulations.
During the war, it was totally illegal to do anything like that. Any kind of signal or transmitter
But you
would
did
be
it.
totally.
Yeah.
But since you're 14, who the hell's going to do anything but a 14-year-old kid? So,
Take you to juvenile.
so we would talk, interview each other, and do any crazy thing we wanted. And it was not only that; it would be.
What would be on the
10 places
AM dial on the radio? Where did you tune in to get to find the radio station?
Well, to start with, most controlled radios are crystal controlled. They're
Right. Could you pick it up like in a car radio when they didn't have car radios back
on
then?
any radio, practically on anything.
Oh, okay.
How you make a transmitter is you take the output and feed it in the input. And it amplifies itself, and when you get to a point beyond where it can amplify itself, it becomes RF strength.
Oh, okay. What I was just wondering is radios have a dial. Did you have a radio station number?
Heck no, you didn't have it.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Anytime you turn the radio, you get it on 10 places on the dial.
Oh, okay. So basically, it drowned out the whole neighborhood of the radio.
Well, not that powerful.
What'd your dad say?
Well, my dad said you could pick it up all over the place. But
Oh, you could.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Wow.
Well, within the immediate area.
yeah.
Because we didn't have any, if you had to put it to an antenna, it would have went for miles and miles. But if you went to just something,
Yeah.
go to the loop on the radio,
Or you would just
it'll only go for 2 or 3 blocks.
Anyway, I'm sorry. We need to get back on talking about
Yeah.
Leonard. We never really.
Oh, Leonard.
Okay. Sidetrack. Sorry.
Well, look, you will not believe, but Leonard, since there was 4 boys in the house they was in, and they only lived in a 2-bedroom house, and they had 4 boys. So the older boys, they always double them up. So Leonard lived in what they call them, they used to call them little smoke houses or outside, little places that are
Yeah.
about 8 feet wide,
Smokehouse.
6 feet high, and about maybe 10 feet deep. He lived in a little place like that, and that's where we did all the radio stuff, because we could get there.
Mess around.
And there was only three, Leonard, Eugene, and myself. So they had a bed that made into a couch, and that was how I got on radio. Then that was during the war. Getting a job, there was no adults. Adults had all government jobs, what they call, what was it, the government jobs called in those days? War essential. So I got a job in the dog food factory. And Leonard got a job in the same dog food factory. It was making dried dog food, all dog food. And Leonard,
Doyle dog.
he's always a guy that saves every dime he ever made. And he rode with me in my old car all the time. And one night, I used to create tricks on Leonard. I played all kinds of dirty tricks on him. Since he was cheap,
Joe, Al. This Leonard.
one time
Leonard
this
might
another
see
guy
this.
had a little roadster car, and he had a I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, he told me, if you do a dirty trick on me at work, you won't be able to get home. Somebody will have to drive you home. And anyway, we went out to lunch, and our lunch period was at 8 o'clock at night. You go to work at 4:30 and you work until 8. You have a 30-minute lunch, and you work until 12:30. Anyway, I can't remember exactly how it was, but he threatened me. And so we went out to eat, and he sat in my car in the car seat, and we got to talking about him being cheap, not paying me for gas to ride home. He rode with me all the time, never didn't contribute. Anyway, I hit him in the jaw as hard as I could.
Oh.
Stunned him. We got up and fought for, but I stood back till he got back, and then you start, how you start the boxing thing. And when I hit him, it cracked my knuckle a little bit when I hit him, and my right hand was sore, so I couldn't hardly fight. So the next day,
Creates bonding.
after the fight, he goes out and finds himself a car and buys a car. He bought a 33 Chevrolet. That was a lot better than mine. And it was a funny thing in that, his car on another deal. So I was a pickler and he was a burner. In other words, making those stoves, the porcelain on a stove, that's melted on there. Well, anyway, my job was running all the metal that has to be painted has to be pickled. And the pickling, you put it down into boiling slope. It's a soap solution at 225 degrees. And it melts the grease off. Then you dip it into clear water. Then you put, I'm trying to think of, these are these big things you use with a power hoist. Lifts a tank is,
Hydraulic thing.
no, it's pulleys. But anyway, you go through, first you put an oak solution, then you boil it again, and then you put it in a soda ash to neutralize the acid, because it's 6% acid. But anyway, that's what I was doing, and he was putting the paint. They would paint them, then you run it in an 1800 degree oven and take it out.
Now, is this a different place than the dog food?
Oh, we only worked at the dog food place. Oh, this is a year after that.
Okay.
And I'm going to high school all the time.
Wow.
I was always worked
And where were you located when you were in high? Was this in Bell Gardens?
This is in the same house.
Okay.
And anyway, the dog food factory, we worked there a year. We had fights with dog food cans, throw them at each other. There's cans of, same cans on there, instead of being metal, they were paper, cardboard.
Hmm.
You get out, you get in a fight with throwing cans at and the management say, I'm gonna fire you guys. We said, you get somebody else, we'll quit. They couldn't get anybody. That was the other thing. The guys at the dog food factory would pay you $20 if you brought a new person. You couldn't be over 18 because you'd be working in a factory.
Where's the factory located? Was it in Vernon or?
Yeah, somewhere over there. It was. How'd you know that?
That's the industrial area for that area.
Yeah, that's where it was. And that's also where Jefferson settled.
Do you remember the name of the dog food?
Doyle Dog Food.
Huh?
Doyle, D-O-Y-L.
They used to have one called Dr. Ross Dog Food. Is doggone good.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, there's some crazy things that happened to the dog food.
Remember that?
We brought a guy
I
in,
love it, Bill.
and here's a guy, at 14, he gets himself a motorbike, you know. In those days, some people get bicycles with a little whizzer motor on them. Well, anyway, when he came to work, I was the person that, after the dog food was made, and we put in boxes, we stacked, those flats you glue around the carts. Well, this bicycle in the warehouse, and we made just about 4 kids could make 30 cartons of dog food a night. We made 30 cartons but it was dry dog food made out of cereals, ground up cereal. But anyway, I had this one guy, he buys himself I don't know how he bought it, but he bought himself a motorbike. And he parked it there in the warehouse, in our warehouse. So right in the middle of it, I start stacking dog food all around it. So I stacked 300 cases of dog food around the motorbike. So he gets ready to go home that night, and this is all at night. You see, you were working at night, and he thought somebody stole his bicycle. We didn't tell him where his bicycle was until about it was at least an hour for him looking for it and trying to figure out, call the police, how you're going to get it, and how we're going to get it. We don't get off until midnight. And so finally, I told him, I said, your bicycle, or motorcycle, they didn't call it, motorbike, was right over in the middle of the stack. But the next night, we load that into boxcars. So you have to ship that dog food out. So that dog food's not going to be moved until the following night. So I remember, climbed over. Finally, he gets a couple other guys, and they have to lift the bicycle up over the top of the dog food. That was one of those things. Well, but that was out of sequence with your story about radio. But when I learned radio, that was in high school, and that's why I knew I'd have a good job when I got in the military, because these were prep courses for military, because they're teaching you basics of things that's going to be needed. So naturally, I get right into the electronics and military.
Okay, well, speaking of military, and we talked about this last night, tell us about your experience with the military and about how you moved up the ranks.
Oh, well, it's funny. Well, when I went to basic training, I had never rode a train until I joined the military, and I got in the train that was going to ship you out of Los Angeles. Remember the train station in Los Angeles back in the 40s?
Mm-hmm. Downtown Los Angeles?
Right downtown. Anyway, we get on well, in those days they called them troop trains. And we stopped in Arizona, we stopped in different places and picked up new recruits. And we're heading to our basic training, and that's in Texas, not El Paso. I can't remember.
Fort Bliss?
No, it's another. Laughlin Air Force, San Antonio.
What's that? Oh, that's right. Okay.
So they get to San Antonio, and they always get there about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you get out and you sleeping on the train. You get out the next morning, and you got to be inducted into the military. And as you walk down, they're shooting you with shots in each arm. Guys giving you shots. You get 6 shots before you get in. And you're getting in at that time in the morning. You're not going to go to bed that night.
They have the air guns then?
No, these are needles. And you're getting GIs are shooting you, not nurses or officers or doctors. GIs are shooting you with in both arms. So they go over and they get you some food, and so at that time they got to get somebody up to get food for you. You're getting there at 2 o'clock, and you get shots in about 4 o'clock. You got to get something to eat, so you don't get to sleep that night. They keep you purposely, keep you awake, so they want to take you down. They got to break you before they can make you. That's the theory of the military. Is that you're not supposed to be a smart-ass little guy when you get there. So anyway, for the first few days, but going to basic training is like another world. You get up and make you fall in and fall out. You was there.
How was your drill instructor?
Huh?
How was your drill instructor?
I'll never forget that little guy. He weighed 128 pounds, and he's always up in that weight and doing everything everybody else does, twice as fast. And I'll never forget, he challenged anybody there that wanted to fight him, fight in the ring. He put a boxing ring outside the barracks, and he'd fight him and let everybody watch. And here we have one guy thinks he's real good, he's muscular and got all the attributes of the kind of guy can really fight. This little Sergeant Eklund, I remember his name now. He gets out there and he does just exactly the way that guy beat my brother Algie up. He started hitting that guy before he knew he was hitting, and he'd back up and get out of the guy's way, and the guy'd come charging. He'd hit him about 4 times, and it was only a 1-rounder. He had that other guy beat up in 1 round, so that stopped all the ones that thought they could beat this sergeant up.
Did he use his bare fist, or did he have boxing gloves?
Oh, we didn't use boxing gloves. Everybody was bare fist. That way it'd give the guy a chance to...
Well, tell us about how you advanced, that story about how you advanced in your ranks right up.
Oh, well, this is how the hypnotism thing came on. I had already bought a book, read the book about hypnosis. Never hypnotized anybody, so I was in basic training, and all these guys in basic training, they don't have time to smoke and get all, so they're having trouble breaking their smoking habit. So I started to, I said, I can hypnotize you and let you break the habit of smoking. So in basic training, I had hypnotized maybe a dozen of them, and that's where I learned the technique, is hypnotize them where they would stop smoking and not have the urge. Then I was transferred to Denver, Colorado. I don't think I'd go through telling you all about that. My voice is getting too weak. We're gonna have to.
Well,
Do you want to take a break?
Yeah.
Yeah, take a break, if you have too long, people